Right, it's 28 minutes away from 2 o'clock, and as mentioned earlier, we're going to be chatting to Brendan Connellan this afternoon, all about the Loaves and Fishes Network. Good afternoon, sir.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for having me or having us. Doing well. Doing well, thanks.
Good to have you in the studio.
Thanks very much.
Welcome. First time you've been here?
Yes.
Hey.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
here we are. Loaves and Fishes Network. What is it all about? In a nutshell, if you could sum it up in one sentence.
I think in one sentence, I'd probably say that the Loaves and Fishes is an organisation that tries to deal with the crisis of childhood that we've got in the Eastern Cape. Because I think it's not too difficult just to look around and see that we've got a major problem when it comes to support and care for our kids.
Mm-hmm. What kids are you talking about now, Brendan? That underprivileged or
yes,
orphaned?
Yeah. Basically, kids that are affected by poverty, violence, HIV, and AIDS.
Okay.
That's essentially the type of child that we look for.
Do you have any figures? What is the crisis, the proportion of the crisis in our region, in East London?
I don't really have major figures that come to mind, but we have done, in 2007, we did a survey, and we got some pretty scary stats from that survey, just of the kids that we look after. We look after 24 early childhood development centres, or rural creches, if you want to call them that, in the Eastern Cape, or around Buffalo City. And then in 2007, the survey that we did indicated that something like 25% of the kids that we look after come from households that earn 250 rands, I think it was, or less a month.
Wow.
50% of the kids earned about or their families, their households earned less than 500 rands a month. So you're looking at those sort of kids. I mean, that's terrible.
Horrific. 250 rand a month.
Yeah, and that's the entire household. So you're looking at like 6 people living off that a month. Yeah. So those are the types of kids that we're trying to, or the type of families, and that we're really trying to aim for.
Okay, because children really, and their development from an early age forms the very basis of society. That looks at tomorrow and tomorrow's problems.
Exactly, and I think that is an area that, although it's recognised, I think it's definitely under supported in the country as a whole. I mean, there has been a much bigger focus on early childhood development of late. There has been a focus on basically basic education, but I don't think there's enough of a focus on kids that are 0 to 6 years old. I know we've had certain meetings with the Department of Social Development, and they themselves admit that they completely under budgeted when it comes to supporting ECD centres. As a result, we're not supported at all by government at this stage. We are working on it, but at this stage we're not. And I think also, I mean, everyone knows that your first couple of years are your formative years, and that really determines what potential you as an individual are going to have for the rest of your life, and whether or not you're going to become an individual that adds value to society or not. Obviously it's not the be-all and end-all of that, but it certainly plays a huge role in determining our future adults.
Okay. Who started LAFN?
It was started as a result of some research in, I think it was 2004, by Dr. Trudy Thomas. She was the former MEC for Health in the Eastern Cape. So her and the other name just slips my mind at this stage, but they initially started doing this research, and from the research they noted the problems of society, essentially. They just found a huge amount of kids out there that were not supported, a huge amount of poverty, and so as a result they basically just tried to do as much as they can to help, and they started by just trying to mobilize civil society. They started by going around asking people for donations, for food, for money, for whatever they could. And then they started what is called the Children for Children campaign. And that was a campaign that still goes. There's about 50 schools now that are involved in it. And for a couple of months a year, kids from the various schools bring an item of food every week. And at the moment we're raising probably about 10, 11 or so, I think it's 11 tons of food that we actually raised from that a year, which is quite a lot of food. Anyway, what happened was at the time 4 schools were involved in it. And then there was a newspaper article about these 4 schools and how much food that they had managed to raise amongst them, and I think they raised 4 tons of food at that time. And then the Premier Balindlela at that time read this article in the newspaper, and she had R1 million that she could give, that she was trying to find a home for, and that formally started.
That lady had vision.
she did.
That lady
yeah,
did.
she did. You miss her.
So food, you get a lot of food, which is good. But what else do you need? Obviously, you need funding. I mean, you can't run something like this without funding.
Yeah, I mean, look, we get a lot of food given to us, but probably only enough to cover about 3 months a year. So I think last year we spent 800,000 rands on food. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if I can just sort of give you a bit of an overview as to the programs that we run.
Yes.
Because I think that sort of is going to help break down our needs and what we do. There's basically a 3-tiered approach that we follow. And what we do is we look after the ECD centres, they're basically rural creches. We call it ECD centres because it's early childhood development centres where we plan to develop children. But I think the word centre is often a little bit, it sounds a bit too formal. It sounds a lot more formal than the centres that we actually find. Mm-hmm. When you first find a creche, it's a community-initiated creche. Often what it is it's a shack or a mud hut or a very informal building of some sort that usually a lady from the community has started to try and get some kids off the streets, or even to try and earn some money. She charges families 20 rands a month or whatever to look after their kids. And those are the types of centres that we look after when I said that we're looking after 24 centres at the moment. And then we take that 3-tiered approach that I mentioned. The first one is the feeding. We feed about 1,500 kids a day. We deliver monthly food parcels to all of the centres. They then feed the kids. But I think you can imagine feeding 1,500 people a day is a huge amount. So we feed them, they get basic meals at this stage. Obviously, we'd like to improve the nutritional value and content of the meals that we provide, but at this stage, they are sufficient. Then the second tier is infrastructural support. Like I said, normally when we find a centre, it's normally a shack or a mud hut or a crumbling building or whatever it is. They've normally got no water. They've normally got very poor hygiene, no toilet facilities, no fencing, and we try and develop that side of it. We often give them new buildings, or at least we fix the buildings that they have at very least, put fencing around to ensure that the kids are in a secure environment, training equipment, playground equipment, learning equipment, water tanks, new toilets, water, whatever we can. We try and supply to them. Obviously, it's very dependent on funding. Mm-hmm. And basically, we're just trying to get an environment that's safe and conducive to learning. And then why I say conducive to learning is the third and probably the core of our focuses is we have an in-house developed early childhood development program where we train the child carers at each of the 26 centres. At the moment, we're training 51 child carers in ECD. And we got 6 full-time trainers, and what they basically do is they visit the centres on an ongoing basis. They run our 3-year program that we've developed, and they assess them. They assess the carers on an ongoing basis. They train them, they develop them, and then the ultimate goal over the 3 years is to take the carer from where we found them, which is normally someone with limited education, hasn't finished matric. We take them to a level over 3 years whereby they'd be able to enroll and successfully qualify for an ECD qualification. Okay. And what that means is that they then able to qualify for certain government grants, stipends, things like that, and able to be self-sufficient so that we can move on and look after new centres.
Why do you do it, Brendan?
If I'm honest, I was initially roped in as our company's community development officer, or whatever you want to call it. So that's how I initially got involved.
But why do LFN themselves do it? I mean, it's so easy to see need out there and to think, somebody will take care of that.
Yeah, well, I think that the rest of my answer is probably going to answer that as well. And initially that was my reason, and it was just out of interest. And slowly but surely your heart gets pulled more and more into it, and you start seeing the real problems that are out there, and you start seeing the fantastic work that the staff are doing at Loaves and Fishes. There's 11 staff. I'm one of the board, so I don't actually work for Loaves and Fishes. Mm-hmm. I'm just a volunteer. And you see the awesome work that's been done, and you see the huge proportions of the problem. And I think anyone that gets that deeply involved and sees what's being done and sees how bad the problem is, it's very difficult to leave, and it's extremely fulfilling.
Awesome, man. Yeah. But now, monthly costs. You were talking about fencing and that sort of thing, fixing up schools and roofs and painting and all that type of. What are the monthly operational costs?
Well, I mean, excluding infrastructure, just to keep our doors open and pay our staff and pay our rent and keep our phones up is probably about 60,000 rands a month.
Okay.
At that stage, we're relying on food to be given to us. Essentially, that's without buying any food. When we start buying food and providing a few other things, we're looking at 80 to 100,000 rands absolute minimum a month. Up to 150 or so thousand rands a month if we're going to really provide adequate meals.
And is that just in our area?
That's just Buffalo City. Yeah, I mean we've probably got 100 centres applying still on our books that we can't look after. When I met with Social Development, they said that they're caring for about, I think it's 1,500 centres in the Eastern Cape, and they've got something like 4,000 or 5,000 centres on their waiting list.
Wow,
so you're looking at enormous numbers. Enormous. It's frightening.
Okay. How can we get involved? Okay, I know listeners are probably thinking, oh no, they're asking for money again, but it's not. Everything costs money these days. You want to do something like this, it has operational costs.
Look, I mean, obviously, we do get the odd surprise from people. We got 50,000 rands put in our bank account by someone. We don't have a clue who it is. It just had the reference, God bless, 2 weeks ago, so I mean those sort of donors are always welcome.
That's a month's
yeah, I mean that's exactly it. It keeps us going for nearly a month. So obviously those sort of people are few and far between, but very necessary. We'd love to get some more corporates involved, but how everyday people can get involved is we have a debit order program. And what we're trying to achieve is 2,000 people in the Eastern Cape, giving us 40 or wherever, but essentially we aim at the Eastern Cape, giving us 40 rands a month. So if we can find those 2,000 people willing to give us 40 rands a month by debit order, we can keep going. We can earn 80,000 rands a month. Now that's going to keep our doors open, it's going to pay our staff, pay our rent, and it's going to buy food.
And help the children. What happens on a daily basis at the creches? What is the program? You mentioned there's the program. Basically, what does it entail?
Well, I mean, it depends. There's 3 different levels of the program. We divide all of our centres into different hubs, so we try and divide them regionally. And then each of our trainers gets about 5 centres each that they look after. And then during the month, they then try and allocate their time between those 5 centres. Depending on the time of year, I mean, the training basically changes because there's a whole long basic curriculum that they have to follow. At the beginning of the year, they'll help the carers with things like registration and what to do with kids and layouts of the building and make sure that the babies are separated from the 2-year-olds and from the 6-year-olds. Then they'll teach them things about what to do during the day and the general format, how to lay out a centre in terms of having a little fantasy area and a sleep area and that sort of thing. Then they'll show them various things that they need to do to keep kids mentally stimulated. So it's an ongoing thing. Also just training on things like HIV and finance and early childhood development theory, that sort of thing on an ongoing basis.
Okay, how do we get in touch with you?
By email, you can email Loaves and Fishes at info@lafn.co.za. And by telephone, 043 722 0010.
You're going far too fast, but I'll keep talking about this.
Perfect.
I really, really will. Where the email address again was?
Info,
there we go.
At lafn.co.za. We'll be able to email debit order forms or any extra information that anyone might need.
Okay, I'm looking at one in front of me here now. Loaves and Fishes Network. You want a form like this? Email info@lafn.co.za. And you say you're looking for 2,000 people at 40 rand.
And 40 rand is
that is doable. Come on, listeners. We got 200,000 or something over a weekly basis. Well, Elise looks away now. Thanks, Elise. 200,000 listeners on a weekly basis, we're told by the authorities. And 2,000 is all we need. Okay, at 40 rand a debit order. And help make a difference in our city. That'll keep you open. How long have you been going? Since 2006?
Yeah, we were formally since 2006. So 5 years we've been going formally.
Okay. Yeah. Now, you guys won an award recently as well.
Yes, we did. Yeah, we're quite impressed with ourselves. It was nice to be recognised. What it was is the SAMAFCO Beacons of Excellence Award. It's quite a coveted award in terms of the ECD sector. There were, I think, 80 or so finalists to the award, of which we eventually won it.
Wonderful.
So, the SAMEFCO is the Solomon Mhlanga Freedom College. It was a school for exiles in, I think it's in Tanzania, and they've basically formed a trust fund for education. Now they have that annual prize, so it just proves that what we're doing is good.
It's good, and has been recognised.
The reason that we won it, as I said, it's the only program that they've seen to date in the country that approaches ECD on a holistic basis. So it's all the elements that you need to make sure an ECD program is successful and runs, and because it's easily replicable. So,
awesome.
It's something that we'd really like to see replicated around the country as well. It's easily done.
And ultimately maybe supported by the government?
Ultimately, hopefully not ultimately, hopefully soon. That's what we're busy working on. But that was the recommendation by SAMEFCO and the IDT, who were also involved in it.
And it's just another example of something good that has come out of East London. We so easily down our own city and talk about how negative things are, but it's something positive that has come out of East London, and as a listener, you and I both need to be supporting this. So get in touch with info@lafn.co.za. LAFN, of course, Loaves and Fishers Network. Where'd the name come from?
I suppose you can say it comes from the Bible. We're not a Christian affiliated organization, although there are lots of Christians within the organization. But essentially, the idea, it comes from the parable from the Bible where you can achieve a lot from a little.
Okay. And I read earlier that where the baskets were left, the baskets were, when Jesus fed the 5,000, there were so many baskets left.
Absolutely.
And what are we going to do with that? We have got so much excess in our lives, and I think it's a challenge. We moan and groan about what we don't have, and you just have to look at one of these kids. Or I'm sure I visited last November. I went to a school, a rural school. It wasn't a creche, just Fort Grey public school out near Greenfield somewhere. Also on a sort of charity outreach type thing, and I was shocked to see the conditions that those kids go to school in. It's a total primary school. The roof was leaking, the floor was a mess because of the water that had come through the roof, but they were happy. They made a difference. They made their own little vegetable garden to sustain themselves, and they weren't complaining. They were making do with what they got. We complain, I want this, and I want a new phone, and I want that, and we're so ungrateful. We've got so much excess, and we really need to be looking at where we can put that excess and help the people around us.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think if the apathy that we're surrounded by often is quite disheartening, and it's huge, because I think we so often come across negativity that we become immune to it. And I think that I wish some people would sometimes phone us and say, can we just go out and see your centres? Because I think once you actually see what's happening out there, and I'm not talking about the bad, I'm talking about the good. Once you actually see, exactly like you say, what the conditions that people are actually operating under and doing well. I mean, the dedication from people that earn next to nothing, the dedication from our staff alone that actually earn very little, is just, it's unbelievably powerful. It's unbelievably heartwarming, like I said. And I just wish that more people would open their minds and their eyes to it.
Yeah, I think more will, Brendan. To be honest, I didn't know too much about this until I first saw the info, and a while back, somewhere along the line, there was a radio ad for it quite a while back, and that was the first time I ever heard of LAFN. So I think getting it out in the public eye or public ear as well is going to help, and I believe there are a lot of people listening today who will get involved.
Yeah, and thank you for your part in that. So we really appreciate that.
info@lafn.co.za. Is there a phone number at all? A website?
Website www.lafn.co.za.
Okay, nice easy one. Can they get a form from there as well?
They can actually. There's two. They can get a form from there, or they can actually apply for an electronic debit order. So they can literally fill in their details there and then. It's very quick and easy. Quite a few people I know have done that. It works well. And if you need your debit order cancelled, which everyone seems to worry about, just email us and we'll immediately cancel it. So, people seem to worry about that.
Okay, lafn.co.za. Debit order of 40 Rand or more. I'm looking for 2,000 people to become a part of this. Come on, anything we've missed? Anything you still want to
No, I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, I could probably go on for the next 2 hours, but I think that really covers the main things I needed to say.
Okay, Brendan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's Brendan Connellan. I'm looking at the website right now, by the way. Go have a look at it with me. lafn.co.za. And find out all about the Loaves and Fishes Network, aiming to assist as many children as possible affected by poverty, violence and AIDS in and around Buffalo City. And the amount is staggering. You wouldn't believe that in a little town, in a little city like East London, there can be so much poverty. And you just got to look at these faces. I always look at the eyes. You see so much in the eyes. lafn.co.za. Go have a look and get involved. Thanks, Brendan.